Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Coming at you with another random Netflix film review, another recent one. Film from 2017, which I didn't see when it came out. I saw it just now. But I really enjoyed it. It got plenty of acclaim when it came out, and that is 2017's It Comes at Night. Now, I know this wasn't loved by everybody. I get that. I also understand the problems people might have with it. Uh, some people might want to call it a psychological thriller or a straightforward thriller. It's definitely a horror film. It's just done differently. I would even put this in, I wouldn't really call it a subgenre, but I guess like a category of recent horror films called the intellectual horror film. Like the films by Robert Eggers, The Witch, The Lighthouse, Ari Aster, Hereditary, and Midsummer. Both those problems I had problems with. Jordan Peele, Get Out, and Us. Other films like Quiet Place or It Follows. The ones that are either a metaphorical or allegorical or artsy. I would kind of put this in that category because it's definitely artsy. Almost, well, I can see why some people might call this pretentious, as with any of the films I just listed. But I see the inspiration that made this film. I see it, and I respect it. I also really respect what this movie did. And it was written and directed by Trey Edward Schultz, who also directed Krisha and Waves, two films I'd never seen. Young guy, he's only 31. So he made this when he was 29, my age. So stars Joel Edgerton, who was great. He's been in a lot of films. I know what he's been in. I think I've only seen him in Black Mass with Johnny Depp, my favorite Johnny Depp movie, which he's an Australian actor and he did the Boston accent really well. Christopher Abbott, Carmen Aogo, Calvin Harrison Jr., and Riley Keough. Sorry if I pronounced any of those incorrectly. And that's the entire cast. That is the whole film. Except except for the baby. The so technic and the grandfather. So there's like a couple more. The music by Brian McCumber was awesome. Very atmospherical, very simple. I would almost say if you take like some scenes like an ominous, simplistic score like John Carpenter, other scenes, the intensity of like Hans Zimmer, like the tribal drums, kind of get the score. And what it is it's this post-apocalyptic outbreak film, which I don't know why I'm seeing finding all these outbreak films by accident during Corona, but whatever. um, doesn't really say where we are, when we are, how much time has passed since the initial breakout, or since society has pretty much fallen. But Joel Edgerton, his wife, and his teenage son, they live in this house way out in the woods. And this movie's a very slow burn, which I like. I love slow burn films. Um, like The Shining and Night of the Living Dead were two main influences on this film, as well as the painting The Triumph of Death from it's, a, it's, a, painting from the 1500s by Pierre I know the painting. Pierre Bruegel the Elder. 1562 oil painting, Triumph of Death. Okay. But he also cited Paul Thomas Anderson, which does very slow burn films. I see a lot of There Will Be Blood in this. I know I sound stuffy. Allergy season. But the thing I like about this is it's not a zombie film. There's no zombies. And it doesn't start out with the post-apocalyptic cliche that we've seen hundreds of times, where it opens up with news footage of the outbreak, telling us what it is, what it does, what's happened around the world. It doesn't do that. It even kind of opens up like you think it's going to be like a pretentious artsy film, because you can tell it's like this wide kind of ratio, and then it says like A22 Productions in like these tiny little letters that you can barely see. Joel Edgerton. But it pretty much does this cold open right in the middle of a scene where Joel Edgerton has his father-in-law, his son, and he's like pale and covered in sores. You can tell he's sick and dying. He shoots him, puts him in an open grave, and burns the body. And they're wearing like thick rubber gloves, gas mask. They each have, a firearm. So, this thing is deadly. They're very careful. It's very contagious. But we don't know what it is, what it does, how it transfers. We find out eventually that symptoms show within a day. And then, that night, there's a noise. And as you can see on the poster of this film, which I know the DVD is different, but I do like this poster because it is a recurring theme. The red door, which is the only way in and out of the house. And they always keep it locked. The son has several nightmares throughout the film, which I'll get to that because that's another cliche. There's this guy, he breaks in, Joel Edgerton. You can tell he doesn't enjoy killing, even if it's for survival. I'm actually going to get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend it on the basis that it's a good movie. I really enjoy it. But I would recommend, if you like films like The Shining, or more recent ones like The Lighthouse or The Witch, really small scale, slow burning films where I guess nothing happens. Like, several reviewers are saying, nothing comes at night. But I guess I do kind of have to explain that even before spoilers. You don't see a zombie or like an infected person. This movie is totally built on paranoia, suspicion, fear, dread. It's like if you take John Carpenter's The Thing, but take The Thing out of it. Just like the growing suspicion and paranoia, trying to stay safe, and done that well. That's what this movie is, but put it in like a outbreak scenario. So if you like films like that, you'll enjoy it. If you need a lot of stuff coming at you and a lot of things happening, you're probably not going to enjoy it that much. But I loved this movie. And so, spoilers. And if you stick with it till the end does have quite a gut punch of an ending, so it's worth it to stick through it. But now, spoilers. This guy breaks in, and he's very cooperative. He doesn't fight back. Joel Edgerton You can tell he doesn't want to kill him unless he has to. He ties him to a tree for a day to make sure he's not infected. He asks him all these rapid fire questions about where he came from, what he wants, where he's going, how long's he been there. He finds out he has, chickens and lots of supplies, but he has a wife and a son. So he agrees to take him on this trip to get his family and his supplies and come back. They'll live together. And even then, like, while they're in the truck, they're shot at, and, he's got to go in full survival mode, like, crawl under the truck and shoot these guys. And part of it is the beard, but also because he's not really a natural survivalist. He reminds me of Joel from The Last of Us. He's got a beard. But like Joel in The Last of Us, he wasn't a survivalist. He was a regular guy who had to adapt to this. We find out later on that Joel Edgerton was a history teacher. So when this whole thing took over, he just had to adapt and get used to it. And it doesn't say how long, like how much time has passed. It feels sort of like that 28 Days Later kind of vibe where it's recent enough that other people could still be around to be a threat. But like, because even when Joel Edgerton finally talks to the guy, he asks if he's heard or seen anything like from the city. The guy says no. So it's sort of like that enough time has passed to get used to it, but not enough time to where it's become the complete lifestyle or lose all hope. But when they come back, that's when the film really picks up. They have like a toddler son. And I would say Joel Edgerton's son, who did do a good job, all the acting was very well done. Calvin Harrison Jr. He was in Ender's Game and 12 Years a Slave. His character's kind of hard to read at times. We get him kind of looking at the other guy's wife. We find out he's 17. Maybe it's, he's hasn't seen a woman in a long time. He likes to go up to the attic because that's like sort of the eardrum of the house where you can hear everyone speaking. Kind of keeps to himself. And as I said earlier, he has a lot of weird dreams and nightmares, which I guess the real horror scenes, like when stuff happens, it is dream sequences. But dream sequences, especially in modern horror, has become such a crappy cliche, and I'm tired of it. Quick example, like that piece of shit movie I reviewed recently, The Prodigy, that came out last year. Like, you can tell something spooky is gonna happen, that something outrageous and loud happens, and you find out, oh, it's just a dream. It was in there just for a scare. Like when she sees the son, he runs towards her, and then when he's right in front of her, it's the full-grown guy. Jump scare. But these, even the dreams are slow burning. If something spooky is happening, it keeps in pace and tone with the rest of the film. No jump scares whatsoever in this film. Really appreciated that. Like he has one dream where the other guy's wife comes on to him and not really vomits, but kind of spits like the black blood into his mouth. Or a dream with his grandfather sitting in front of him. And we get like a little bit of day-to-day life with these two families. And we get Joel Edgerton has taken full control of the whole survivalist. You know, we don't go outside at night unless we have to. The Everything's boarded up except for the red door, the only way in or out. Even the door beyond that, to the outside, is always locked. Always have mask, gloves, and firearm. Uh, there's an outhouse, but at night we use buckets and we empty it. Meals are 2 times a day to conserve. Everyone washes their own dishes. You know, he's very specific and very controlling of everything. And one day they have a dog. He kind of goes nuts, runs off. And, you know, one night his son, he hears a noise and he sees the toddler son of the other couple laying on the floor of the grandfather's room. So he kind of takes him by the hand, brings him back to the other couple. And then that's where he hears another noise at the red door. And he'll see things and hear things, but we don't ever see what he sees. And I think that's part of the paranoia. Also with the dream sequences, it's like where it happened, where there's nothing so jumpy or outrageous. It, you know, usually in the dream fake outs, you're kind of just like, oh, well, okay, that didn't happen. But with here, it's like, okay, did that really just happen? Was that a dream? It makes you just as, like, disoriented as the character's waking up, which I thought was a nice touch. Even one part where it's like the dream fake out within a dream fake out. And the film is really building to this climax where, you know, when he hears the noise, he wakes everyone up and he finds the dog is there, sick. But how did the dog get to that mid-room in between the doors? And, you know, they hear that the baby was in the grandfather's room, and who opened the door. The kid can't remember. The son swears the door was already open. There was a conversation earlier between Joel Edgerton and the other husband. And he says, you know, he grew up alone with his dad, doing different jobs. It's like, you're an only child? Yeah. But when he was tied to the tree, he said he was staying with his brother. It's like, oh, technically her brother, but he's like my brother, my brother-in-law. So there's all these breadcrumbs that just lead to the paranoia and the suspicion that is perfectly paced. And so then when they find out, you know, they don't really know how or why the door was open, why the son was sleeping in the grandfather's room. So Joel Edgerton just says both families should quarantine themselves in their own bedrooms for 2 days. Let things settle, make sure no one's sick. But then the son goes up to the attic, hears the baby coughing, the couple arguing about leaving. He wakes Joel Edgerton and his wife up. And then you pretty much just have this pretty much hostage. Like, he has Joel Edgerton hostage with a gun and say, you know, we want to leave, but we want to take what's fair. And it's all leading to this tense moment where, you know, Joel Edgerton does get the upper hand, and he's walking him outside. And of course, his wife has a rifle on him too. But he's able to get away, and I mean, he's beating Joel Edgerton with his pistol. Joel Edgerton's wife shoots him, but from being beaten and disoriented, he goes to shoot the wife, who's, you know, the other guy's wife, while she's holding her toddler. And when he shoots, somehow he totally misses her and kills the baby. and she's just screaming hysterically, so then he shoots her. And of course, by this point, the son is outside. And then we have a couple, it does a couple of fake endings. Like, I thought it was going to end when the son runs into the bathroom like he's going to puke. And then but he doesn't. He looks him in the mirror. You kind of see his eyes are kind of off, which is another symptom. Then the screen just goes black. I thought it could have ended there. But, we get this scene of him laying in bed. He's got sores. Obviously, he's sick. There were even scenes earlier while they were quarantining themselves where he says, if the baby has it, that means I definitely have it. And they try to say, no, it's not that. It can't be that. It'll be fine. The mother's kind of comforting him. But then we kind of get, what I get from this, we get like a dream or a flashback to when he's approaching the red door, the night before. It shows that the door was already open and that he kind of went in there, or at least a little bit. I'm guessing that's to show where the infection, how the infection got in the house. Even though the baby was coughing and, he put him to bed before he went to the door, I'm guessing that's what that is. It shows how it came. Because then the next shot is we see Joel Edgerton and his wife alone sitting at the dinner table. They're both obviously sick and infected, and they both just kind of stare at each other. Then it ends. So, a pretty downer ending. I don't really have any complaints about this film. I thought maybe it could have had a couple more scenes of growing suspicion. Like maybe not quite John Carpenter's The Thing. Definitely not quite The Shining as far as how far to take it. But I think it could have had a little bit more tidbits like that. Dream sequences, which is something I absolutely hate. It's a cliche I'm tired of. This film did do it well. I love the fact that it is an outbreak film, and it's sort of presented and marketed as like a zombie film. But the fact that you don't ever really see an infected person like alive and behaving the way they do, the fact we don't see that, I thought was a brilliant idea, something you don't really see. That, you have an outbreak film, like, it makes them fucked up, but you don't show any of it. This movie purely is about the paranoia, the suspicion, the suspense. The music, I thought, was great. The music was upbeat and intense, like tribal drums when it had to be. It was ominous and sort of carpeted, very subtly when it had to be. I can see this being called a psychological horror film. It's definitely a horror film. It's more horror than thriller. I've actually been debating on, because I'm on several horror fan sites on Facebook, and people are still kind of confused on thriller and horror, or thinking because they don't find it scary, it can't be a horror film. I've been debating on making a video explaining all that, but I really liked It Comes at Night. A lot of people don't like downbeat endings, but this is a kind of movie where, you can't always show outbreak films with someone moving on to a better place or being saved, by the military, or things being resolved. there's always going to be a case where, you know, there's a group of survivors and not everyone's going to make it. And, you know, the fact, I thought it ended at the perfect place because Joel Edgerton had been so careful and so, you know, adamant on certain things that just when they shared that look, it doesn't even say if they've already killed the son off or if he's still upstairs sick and they already have it. But I thought that, you know, this movie did not wear out its welcome. It is 91 minutes. It used every minute wisely. It ended perfectly. It didn't have any cliches. The ones it did have, it used wisely, like the dream fake-outs. Other cliches it threw right out the door, like opening up with news footage and explaining everything to us, or, you know, using the infected for scare scenes. We did see the grandfather in one scene during a dream, but it was slow and subtle. The acting was very well done. The atmosphere was very strong. I I really liked this movie. And of the intellectual horror films, like the ones I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I liked this more than most of them. I mean, it's very different. I would put this in the category with like Robert Eggers. I liked it more than the Ari Aster films because I didn't really have any issues with this. But yeah, to see an Outbreak movie where they don't focus on the infected, or even like a Romero film where it's the downfall of the humans being their own undoing, which it kind of is, but it's more about that growing paranoia and suspicion. And I thought it did it very well. I really enjoyed this movie. Very well done. But anyway, I gotta go blow my nose again, but thank you for watching.